Welcome and welcome back to the 4th annual SENSE.nano Symposium, the body at all scales. SENSE.nano is the first center of excellence powered by MIT Nano, with a focus on sensors, sensor systems, and approaches for measuring the world, whether it be biology and life and health, agriculture, the environment, manufacturing, and the world. Our symposium this year, focused on the body at all scales, is co-sponsored by the Industrial Liaison Program, the Institute for Medical Engineering and Science, the MIT Clinical Research Center, and MIT Nano. Sensors and sensing systems are the enabling technology for science and medicine. Sensors and sensing systems measure your vital signs, map your movements, characterize your voice, are used to examine your cells, your health, and the world. Sense is how we observe and explain and care for life at all scales, which is why we've organized our symposium through the multiple scales of life, from the cell to the organ to the body to populations. For the symposium, we've convened technical leaders, researchers, industry leaders, big companies and small companies, and yourselves as active participants in asking questions. You'll continue to hear technical talks from MIT-launched startups and our visionary and phenomenal students. We provide the context of why sensors and sensing are important, the innovations that are happening that allow us to study biology, care for humans in their natural environment. We continue to highlight these needs today at the body and population scales. Yesterday, we were inspired by our keynote, Elazar Edelman, that shared with us both a perspective from an engineer and a clinician on the important convergence of perspectives on life and perspectives on engineering and how to solve problems at the convergence of those two. We organize our sessions, our discussions around these scales, around the scales of life and the impact of sensors and new technologies on our government, financial, and social systems. I'd like to reintroduce Vladimir Bulovich, the founding director of MIT Nano, who will offer his welcome and also introduce our keynote for the day. Vladimir, good morning.
Good morning, Brian. It is great to be back with you. Today, I have a pleasure of greeting you from MIT Nano, the facility that still operates and indeed is supporting hundreds of users today to be able to advance the next set of sensing technologies as needed. I also have an exquisite pleasure to welcome Brendan Cronin. He is a part of a very important group of companies that support MIT Nano, our founding members. Analog Devices is the company that Brendan is a part of. And he joined Analog Devices right after finishing his microelectronic engineering degree from University College Cork in Ireland back in 1998. He started at Analog Devices as a design engineer, working on integrated circuits in deep sub-micron CMOS technology. And in 2005, switched and joined the newly formed Automotive Group, helped define and drive the group's powertrain strategy and using specific focus of his work on non-contact sensing. A few years later, in 2014, he joined the healthcare business unit as marketing and systems applications director and helped shape the company's vision and strategy for digital health and related applications. In 2019, he was asked to lead a new strategic initiative focused on biosensors within the digital health business unit. And today leads cross-functional team focused on solving the industry's toughest problems in the point-of-care diagnostic, synthetic biology, and advanced therapeutics. Today, he'll tell us about Analog Devices' vision and their introduction of digital health businesses, indeed, the role of sensors in Medtech. Brendan, please take over.
Good morning, all. It's my great pleasure to be with you. And before I begin, I just want to take some time to thank the SENSE.nano committee here. Thank you for the invite and giving us the opportunity to speak to everybody. So my name is Brendan Cronin. I'm a director in the Digital Healthcare Business Unit. And today I'm going to talk about digital health and specifically the role of sensors in medtech. So we are going to look at the macro problems facing the healthcare system today and the disruptions that are taking place, and also how sensors play a role in creating what I think is a very bright digital future for all of us. Especially now in the current COVID-19 pandemic, the opportunity for disruption and innovation in healthcare may actually be greater and more urgent than ever before. But before going into detail on healthcare specifically, I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce ADI and describe what it is we do. So ADI is an analog semiconductor company and a leader in capabilities that bridge the physical and digital worlds. We were founded 55 years ago by Ray Stata, who many folks at MIT will know particularly well, and our headquarters is in Wilmington, Massachusetts, just about 20 miles north of downtown Boston. Our revenue, ADI's revenue last year was approximately $6 billion, and we have 6 business units focus on the industrial market, digital healthcare, automotive, consumer communications, and aerospace and defense. The company has approximately 16,000 employees that work from locations around the globe, and 5,000 of which are engineers and scientists who are tasked with solving the toughest and most pressing problems in our chosen markets. In regards to manufacturing, we have key sites in the United States, in Europe and Asia, and a large portion of our products are manufactured internally using our own wafer fabs and facilities. And this has greatly benefited the industry, the healthcare industry, in the current supply crisis for COVID-19. But it also allows us to experiment with new materials and new novel sensors, which are so needed for this digital health innovation or vision. So back to healthcare. I think as a society, there are 2 things we can pretty much all agree on healthcare on a worldwide level. We want better quality healthcare, and we want everyone to be able to afford it. Unfortunately, less than half our population have access to basic healthcare. And for those lucky enough to have that, the costs are prohibitively expensive. So on average, many Western countries spend over $5,000 per person on healthcare on an annual basis. And in the US, that spend doubles at more than $10,000 per person, which works out at 18% GDP. So that's a truly outstanding, astonishing number. But the really scary part is that costs are continuing to escalate and increase year over year. So today, the global spending on healthcare is already very high at an $8 trillion levels. And at the current pace, it could hit $18 trillion by 2040. So suffice to say that all of this is driving a genuine appetite for change and a desire for new solutions in the healthcare space. So what are these solutions and how likely are they to show up in a reasonable time frame? So for me personally, having spent a number of years in healthcare, right at the boundary of the clinical world and the technology world, I can safely say that I'm optimistic about the future, and particularly in the role that digital technology will play in addressing both the cost, quality, and access needs that I spoke about previously. So let me walk you through some examples here. So take radiology, for instance. Here, innovations in sensing technologies such as photometric and ultrasonic transducers, when coupled with predictive analytics, are leading for the first time to first-time right diagnosis of illness. So no longer will the patient have to endure multiple scans or retakes to get a diagnosis. Additionally, innovation in those same sensor technologies are leading to mobile diagnostic tools that move with the patient as opposed to the other way around. So other innovations at the nanoscale, which we'll focus again on later, are driving unprecedented sensitivity for rapid point-of-care testing in areas such as infectious disease, inflammation, and beyond. Another example is in the at-home space. So at-home digital solutions for chronic care management have also begun to emerge. And these solutions have the potential to finally drive large amounts of costs out of the system, while also benefiting the patient in terms of disease burden and convenience. So taking a slightly longer view of the technology solutions which are up and coming, advancements in areas like cell therapy, synthetic biology, and the discovery of new biologics are also making rapid progress. And these solutions very disruptive. The potential to be. We will look at synthetic biology as an example later in my presentation. I guess my final point here is on the role of government and how critical they are to driving incentives to reward efficiency and efficacy, effectiveness. And this really has the potential to drive long-lasting behavior changes. And with that will come potential for large cost reduction. So that's also a key part of this, but there is growing evidence that governments are starting to do this on a worldwide basis. An example of that is here in the US. With last year, there was an announcement by the Trump administration for the American Kidney Health Initiative, which aims to bring dialysis to the home. And that's very welcome. It holds the promise of taking massive costs out of the system, which have been but it also means that the dialysis process for the patient becomes a lot more patient friendly and convenient. But with that, for technology companies, there are plenty of challenges, particularly on the digital side. As they look to automate some of that process at home, it presents a huge challenge for digital and data companies alike. So at ADI, our digital healthcare business unit is focused on exactly these problems and on the people that will help realize our version of this digital health vision. As a result, we have taken steps to organize our group into 4 main areas, namely remote patient monitoring, including solutions for chronic care, advanced therapeutics, medical imaging, and a new team which I lead, which is focused on biosensors. And as we will see later, our remote patient monitoring team will target and is targeting emerging in and out of hospital applications, where we see a large shift to very meaningful and near constant monitoring of the body, whereby in the past sporadic check-ins were the standard of care. So this is a very exciting change for the industry and for us, as the technology holds the promise of being able to anticipate and thereby prevent acute events and therefore reduce costs in the system, but also take costs out of the system down the road in the form of costly treatments. Our medical imaging team is focused on improving diagnostic image quality and also time to results, the time to get an answer. In recent years, the technology here that this team has developed has helped enable new applications and has driven new applications such as teleradiology and remote imaging, which has proven to be also a very valuable tool during the current pandemic. Finally, our advanced therapeutic group is focused on nanoscale sensors and signal processing for areas such as implantables and minimally invasive surgical tools. Here, the key figures of merit are functionality and performance per square millimeter, as size and space is a premium, but also power consumption to keep it down to a minimum so as to avoid embedding large batteries in our bodies. So that's also a key focus for the group. And as I said, the area that I lead, the biosensor area, is a new team. And our main goal is to make true point of care testing a reality. We'll talk a little bit about that, how that is happening later. So as we narrow down our chosen areas and applications, we also need to think about our technology roadmaps. And for us, this is how we tend to look at that. For example, in the imaging space, our technologists and scientists are focused on miniaturizing optical and ultrasonic transducers for imaging and the interface platforms that go with them. This includes package design and modeling, which is very often a critical piece to get right. And as it's the interface very often to the customer system or to the end system, or indeed to our bodies. In the patient monitoring space, high quality sensor RF technology, as well as processing technology, is a key enabler and enables the user to gather the vast amount of data needed for wellness monitoring and to generate insights and to go on and generate relevant alerts to doctors and caregivers. In the biosensor space, more than Moore fabrication technologies, which combine conventional semiconductor processing with new novel materials, is the norm. And this is needed to construct the new nano-sensors for a host of new applications. In this space, much of the R&D and hence innovation occurs at the boundary of the sciences, where biology and chemistry meets traditional semiconductor device physics. So in the following segment, I'm going to choose a couple of the lead digital health applications and discuss the technology innovations that are happening, but also a hint at some of the remaining challenges and the road ahead. So the first area I'm going to shine a light on is digital surgery, or the digital cath lab. Here the need is to declutter the lab, the operating room, improve workflow, and drive effectiveness of the surgical procedure. And the need is obvious. After all, we all want to enjoy a safe, pain-free, and successful hip, knee, or heart surgery. So, and we also want to get back on our feet quickly. So that ask is a big one, and it creates a number of technology hurdles for companies like ADI and the like. For instance, it creates the need to significantly improve digital SNR, signal to noise ratio, in some of our sensors in order to reduce X-ray dose, as an example, or the deployment of high fidelity RF transceivers to remove cables in order to declutter the operating room, or integrate tiny sensors in the tips of surgical tools and catheters in order to enable applications like robotic surgery. So plenty of challenges there. And here considerations for companies like ADI is areas like visualization. How easy is it to the surgeon to interpret the image? Form factor becomes very important, particularly for devices which are implanted into the body for imaging. The reliability of those components, as well as the ease of use, and the typical figures of merit associated with sensors, such as sensitivity and selectivity. So these are all real decision drivers for the surgeon, and this area has been waiting for the technology to turn up to drive these initiatives in the digital surgery. Despite the hurdles that I mentioned, though, I am pleased to say that the move to the digital suite operating room is well underway, and governments in both Europe and the US are also cooperating and accelerating the next generation of smart catheters and smart cath labs in order to make the next generation intuitive cath lab of tomorrow a reality. Another example I want to shine some light on is in the area of disease or chronic disease management for the home. As I hinted at earlier, in this application, a leapfrog is needed in digital device and service technology to be able to make products for the next generation of systems. In most all of these cases, devices will need to get really small. They will need to become wearable in some cases and be supremely energy efficient and certainly wireless. In addition, multiple measurements will need to get fused together, and new smart ways to aggregate those measurements and process them without compromising energy and portability will become an area of importance, and also an area to differentiate. So a real tough challenge for technology companies, but certainly it looks like a very rewarding one. Collaboration too between tech giants and data companies, between payers and providers. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm on the right one, Brian. Yeah. Again, so patient compliance is also a big issue in the out of hospital and at home area. And here, medical personnel are largely unavailable, except for a teleservice. So being able to reduce this dependence is also an area to stand out. So despite the challenges, I see this area as ripe for disruption and likely to have one of the biggest impacts on healthcare cost reduction in the next 10 years. But ultimately, the speed with which this gets adopted and deployed will come down to government initiatives and how well the industry is able to collaborate and get these new services. But my bet is that the technology hurdles, although still significant, can be overcome in the medium and short term. We're changing topics now to nanoscale biosensors, which is a really interesting area that I'm focused on, and an area that has tremendous potential to disrupt the healthcare market, and indeed into adjacent markets also. So in the nano world, tiny interactions between various forces begin to have a much greater meaning. So for example, we can get a better understanding of gases, contaminants, bacteria and other pathogens, and of course the environment. But sensing at this scale does not come for free. The sensor design becomes far more complicated. The manufacturing of the sensor becomes higher cost and higher risk in terms of upfront investment. But innovation here, particularly at the boundary of the sciences, can have real impact, as we'll see later. So with this in mind and the perceived benefits of the biosensor nanoscale transducers, ADI formed a new team within the healthcare and digital healthcare business unit, focused on exactly the problems that I mentioned earlier. And the mission is to deploy biosensors at scale into the IVD in vitro diagnostic market, but also leverage that technology into adjacent fields like therapeutics and also in synthetic biology. So in all these applications, nano devices will need to be small, they will need to be low cost, as well as having the traditional sensor characteristics of being sensitive and selective for the target application. They will also need to be designed so that the environment does not interact with them, which is much more involved, particularly during the manufacturing scale up and bring up of such sensors. However, when it comes to sensors and indeed nano actuators for that matter, it's no longer just about understanding the specifications and designing the chip. We also need to clearly understand how the device will be used and how trade-offs in the system it resides in can be made, whether that be through algorithms, AI, or otherwise. So with that, let me share some examples on specific areas that ADI is involved with. So ADI is involved in two main areas that I want to share with today. The area on the left is the point of care space. So in the case of COVID-19 testing today, the so-called rapid point of care test, which is standard of care, is used using technology with lateral flow assays. And that's used to detect signatures of the virus. They can be used outside of the lab, which is really beneficial, of course, but they greatly suffer with inaccuracy and in some cases are not useful at all. So tests based on new chip scale sensors and nano sensors in particular, however, hold the promise to deliver both the speed, the rapid test piece of it, as well as the precision. and in some cases, an increase in sensitivity of 4 orders of magnitude is possible compared to lateral flow assay techniques. So this is the background to ADI's partnership with Pinpoint Science that we announced late last year, and I'm happy to report that both teams are making good progress on this product. Another area that I want to shine a spotlight on is in the area of synthetic biology. So today's DNA synthesis machines, or DNA writers, suffer from scale and cost issues, as well as inaccuracy, and they struggle with synthesizing long strands or chains of DNA. So our collaboration with Evenetics in the UK, which we announced publicly in the beginning of September, hopes to solve this problem and unlock brand new applications in the biotech space and extend to outside of healthcare into the industrial space as well as into aerospace. So if successful, this solution will be the first and the only platform that enables long chain DNA synthesis and assembly for rapid prototyping, and this could have a major impact on the drug and vaccine development space, as well as on the testing of new therapeutics. In addition, we are confident and are working on solutions in adjacent applications, which are in the petrochemical, agriculture, and food sectors. So in conclusion, in 2020, we are at a point where we have a wealth of knowledge and experience to build upon for the healthcare market. Digital technology is finally becoming mature enough and is giving us the tools to revolutionize how healthcare will be delivered in the years ahead. So nano-sensors will be used to diagnose illness faster and be used to invent new medicine in the case of synthetic biology. Smart devices will routinely monitor our bodies and the environment and help manage our disease in a semi or autonomous way. Doctors will routinely use digital tools to predict acute events rather than react to them. To flourish, technology companies such as ADI will need to collaborate within our ecosystem and down select to only the most important problem areas. But new innovative digital technology will become the new currency and will drive better outcomes for patients, payers, and providers. But perhaps the biggest innovation in digital health will come from the new ways we find to work together. So thank you.
Participants, please use the Q&A function to ask questions. But let me kick it off with, in this era of point of care and microfluidics, there's the sensor, the transduction mechanism by which we measure something and produce some data. How is analog approaching the sensor versus the system, which is the communications and the data processing? Is that something that the new business unit is expanding, or is that a opportunity that you explore in collaborations?
Yeah, no, good question. So at the sensor level, obviously one technology is not going to do it all. So we're exploring, both electrochemical and optical techniques. But even beyond just the sensor level, we also find ourselves working at the system level, working on the readout and the algorithms of those sensors and how they get used in the end application. So we always have a partner, of course, that we work with mainly on the biology and on the chemistry side. But as I said, we tend to think of it holistically. It's not just a sensor and chip problem. It becomes a system and an integration problem also, and we're focused there.
And thank you for that. I'm going to take a moment to confirm that we're having sound. I'm seeing some comments on the chat that the question was not heard. So I think I'm just asking control room, is my voice coming through? Yes. Okay, they hear me now. Let me just repeat the question that Brendan answered. I asked about the perspective that analog takes in terms of developing sensor versus the system into which the sensor sits, including the communications technology, the processing, and how that is approached in the new business unit. So thank you for that. So there was a question here from the audience. in particular on wireless technology. There's a diverse range of different communications protocols. What is the flavor, if you will, of wireless technology that are going to be the most important or dominant in these at-home and digital diagnostics areas?
No, excellent question. Excellent question. Hot topic. So, when it's out of hospital, Bluetooth tends to be, the preferred route, but it comes with its share of problems. And that's usually for local or short communication range, and then onto a hub and to the cloud using a Wi-Fi link. In the in-hospital, wireless communication also has its difficulties. So there are some emerging, standards. One of them being M-band, for example, is an option that some big medical device companies are pursuing. And ADI, our role is to, whatever the application is, we develop or partner with companies to bring that technology and bring it to the market. So we don't really bet on just one solution. We tend to survey the market and the technology out there and work with what is best suited for the application.
Thank you for that, Brendan. So one last question. In terms of the competencies and the partnerships that you develop, certainly you need to recruit additional talent that have the perspectives on life and biology and partner with companies. What's the opportunity there to work with startups in particular, and how are you approaching building up the teams that are addressing the problems that you're trying to address?
No, excellent question, and very relevant, particularly in the new biosensor group. So we spend a lot of time working with startups. Part of that initial work is really doing due diligence on the technology and trying to come up with our own TRL or technology readiness level assessment. To do that, we need to have experts in our own group. So experts on biochemistry, for example. We have some chemists in our team, and we have a number of biomedical engineers in our team. So that's how we generally assess startups. But for sure, we can't do it all alone. We work also with some large companies who would have the traditional infrastructure there and go to market. And then we would come in and help on the sensor design as well as the subsystem design as it integrates into the end product.
Very good. Brendan, with that, I thank you, and I'm hoping my audio is still coming through. So thank you for sharing that perspective. I wish you and Analog all the best as you develop the new business unit, and look forward to both hiring our students and to collaborating at MIT and collaborating with the broader ecosystem. So I applaud you and applaud Analog for initiating this new endeavor. And I think the opportunity and the timing is very ripe and appropriate to be doing so. So thank you for kicking us off for the day.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity.